All right, so buying and selling a business, M&A type of transaction, whether you're the seller or the buyer, should you have an attorney in the process? So some of this comes down to what's the value of the business? Is it worth, the cost benefit analysis? Okay. Is it really worth spending a bunch of money? I mean, it can be $2,500, it could be $40,000, $50,000 in attorney's fees, depending on the complexity, size of the transaction, things like that. Is it worth spending that money versus the potential risks? So you need to understand what the risks are, first of all. If you're selling a small mom and pop store for 50 grand in cash, um, maybe you don't necessarily need an attorney. Do you have someone advising you on the potential issues? That's the biggest question, really. Whether you're a buyer or a seller, is are you getting some advice from someone who does this all the time? Whether it's an M&A attorney, a tax advisor, CPA, a business broker, investment banker, someone who's involved in and does that kind of work all the time, buying and selling businesses, because you have to look at the tax implications of, am I buying this the right way? Am I selling it the right way? What are my tax implications? Should I be doing something differently? And structure, when you go in to buy or sell a business, is it an asset sale? Is it a stock sale or an entity sale? So think about it this way. If you want to purchase an asset, okay, well, there's a corporation that bought this house and developed it. I love the area, I love the location. It was some investor, I guess, and they bought it through their corporation. I want that house. I want to live there. I want the whole thing. So you go in and you say, and maybe that there's a business that runs out of that house. So I want to buy that. So you go in and you say, okay, do I want to buy the house, just the assets, and maybe assume any kind of liability like a mortgage that they have on the house? Or do I want to buy the corporation? The corporation is the one that owns the house. You could technically go in and just buy the corporation. And because you bought the corporation, now you own the house too through the corporation. So that's similar when you're buying and selling a business. If you're doing an asset sale, you're just buying the house directly. And you have to negotiate if you're assuming any liabilities, what assets you're getting, versus a stock sale where you're just buying the corporation. And the corporation includes the asset, which is the house, but it also includes the liabilities. You don't know the history of that corporation. Did the corporation have employees before? Did they have potential claims against it? Are you buying a corporation that has some history to it, some background that could cause future issues for you? Litigation, liabilities, those are things that you have to think about, and you need someone advising you on that kind of stuff, whether that's a good M&A attorney, business broker, banker, CPA, that can look at, okay, is this the right structure to do this? What assets am I getting? What liabilities? Is there future risk? Is there indemnification? Are there liens? Am I getting title properly? Is there a lien against it, or, somebody hold a claim that can later say, no, that's my asset. These are all things that you have to think about when you're buying or selling a business. So this is stuff that a good advisor will walk you through. So if you're doing it on your own, I would highly advise against that, but at least getting some kind of professional advice. But if you think, well, the value of this business, it's only 20 grand, and, I'm just selling some assets for 20 grand. Yeah, you can probably do that. Make sure you document everything properly. So you want everything in writing, what you're getting, what you're paying. Are you excluding any liabilities? Is there indemnification? Are there warranties involved? If you're buying an asset, is there some kind of warranty that it's in good condition, that it's owned 100% by the seller that's selling it to you? Because if you don't have that kind of stuff, something goes wrong down the road, you find out, oh, they didn't have the right to sell it to me in the first place. You have to have a breach of contract claim. You want to have a written contract that includes all this stuff. So it's helpful to have all that stuff in writing. can you go online? There are resources that have sample asset purchase agreements. Sometimes people will buy real estate that includes a business. There are standardized forms, a lot of times for real estate associations to purchase the real estate, which may include check the box for the business kind of thing. Those might be okay, standardized forms, but you want to at least have something in writing if you're doing it yourself, and that you've talked to advisors about the tax implications, the structure, and any other issues that could come up that you're not aware of. That's the biggest problem. The biggest pro of having an advisor or an attorney is they've done this all the time, so they understand, okay, here's some risks, here's some pitfalls you want to avoid and understand before going in to make sure we cover those things. So, and if you do it yourself and it's a small deal, obviously everything's in writing, reps and warranties, indemnification is covered, any kind of insurance is covered, list of assets that you're getting, making sure you exclude any potential liabilities. All this stuff needs to be in writing, and you want to have documentation of, okay, well, it's a vehicle, so you want something to show title transferred from the prior owner to you. So you have to have bills of sale, assignments, whatever it is to make sure title is transferred properly to you. Yeah, I mean, just make sure everything's in writing, really. I mean, if you use, especially if you're using a template, I usually advise against, using any kind of template. It's not that expensive to hire an attorney. Smaller deals, it might be $2,500 flat fee total, and you get somebody experienced. Now, a lot of attorneys might charge you 10 grand, 15, 20 grand for small deals. That's usually the bigger firms, to be honest. The larger law firms aren't going to do anything less than $30,000 usually more like 50, 60, 100,000 in legal fees for very basic deals. So find somebody who specializes and maybe get some quotes, look for boutique or smaller law firms or lawyers that handle those kinds of issues. Now, tip, if you want your deal to go through and you're going to hire an attorney, you want to make sure you hire an M&A attorney who does this all the time. And I call them deal lawyers, because if you don't hire a deal lawyer, and anyone who does M&A, which I do a lot of, will tell you that if you don't hire a deal lawyer, the chance of the deal going through is very low. Because if you hire an attorney who is a litigation attorney or also works in other areas, they might be objecting to things that are normal. Like somebody sends a contract and it has a provision in there, and they're like, we can't agree to that. We've got to negotiate this and this and that. And they end up taking so much time on something that most people agree to that's going to kill the deal. They find another buyer, they walk away, the loan doesn't go through because it doesn't close in time. So if you do hire an attorney, make sure you go to a deal lawyer who does M&A work all the time, does a lot of transactions, so that they understand how to make deals close. Obviously, you want to make sure you're protected, but they understand how to make sure you're protected while still making sure the deal closes. Don't rely on necessarily a broker. Just like when you're buying real estate, the broker's job is to get a commission. Yes, they're there to protect you and look out for your best interest, but realize they are worried about their commission and the deal closing. So you don't want them to push you into something you're not comfortable with. So you want to have some kind of outside advisor, like an M&A attorney, to say, hey, don't you think we should negotiate this or not agree to that? Your broker is not the person that can give you that advice. That's legal advice. And a lot of brokers or investment bankers may kind of border on giving legal advice, and it's usually bad legal advice because they want to close the deal. Like, oh no, that's standard. Just agree to that. We'll close. I would be cautious of that. So it's usually a good idea to talk to someone. If it is a small deal, document everything, whether it's an asset purchase or a stock or entity purchase. Make sure title is transferred properly. Make sure you cover the transition period from when you sell or buy to taking over. There's a lot of issues there that come up, okay, well, when do you start paying the utilities here versus me? Do I get a prorated credit for the amount of time you were in the building before I took over? What about money that comes in payments come in to our credit card machine after we close. Do I have to give that to you? There's a lot of transition issues that you need to work through and think through just from a practical standpoint, not even necessarily a legal standpoint. So make sure you think through all that stuff, and maybe get a consultation and see what you might be missing.